The massive space station called Centauri Prime floated in the darkness between two bright stars. It was the size of a small moon, and home to the most important fighting tournament in the galaxy. Every year, the best warriors from dozens of different alien worlds came here to prove who was the strongest. Captain Jake Morrison stood at a huge window looking down at the main fighting arena. The arena was so big that it could hold 1 million people. Bright lights shone down on the fighting floor, where alien warriors were already practicing their moves. Jake had never seen anything like it in his life. "This place is incredible," Jake said to the woman standing next to him. Lieutenant Lisa Harper was the head of security for the human team that had come to watch the tournament. She was shorter than Jake but had the kind of muscles that came from years of hard training. "It's big, I'll give you that," Lisa said. Her voice was calm and steady. She was watching the alien fighters below with the eyes of someone who understood fighting. "Look at that one there. The big lizard creature. See how he moves?" Jake looked where she was pointing. A warrior that looked like a giant lizard walking on 2 legs was throwing punches at a training dummy. Each punch made a sound like thunder and left dents in the metal dummy. "He's strong," Jake said. "He's slow," Lisa replied. "Strong doesn't always win fights." Down in the arena, more alien fighters were showing off. There were bug-like creatures with sharp claws that moved faster than the eye could follow. There were huge bear-like aliens with thick fur and muscles bigger than tree trunks. There were snake people who could twist their bodies in ways that seemed impossible. But the crowd was looking at one fighter more than all the others. His name was Zexthul, and he was the champion of the entire galaxy. He had won the tournament 5 years in a row. No one had even come close to beating him. Zexthul was 7 feet tall and looked like a human, but bigger and stronger in every way. His skin was dark blue and covered with scars from old battles. Each scar told the story of a fight he had won. His home planet was called Drakmor, and his people were known as the best fighters in the galaxy. "That's him," Jake said, pointing at Zexthul. "That's the champion everyone talks about." Lisa nodded. She watched as Zexthul picked up a piece of metal that must have weighed hundreds of pounds and bent it into a circle with his bare hands. The crowd cheered and clapped. "Show off," Lisa said quietly. The opening ceremony began with loud music and bright lights. Aliens from every corner of the galaxy filled the seats. Some looked like animals that walked upright. Others looked like plants or rocks that had learned to move. A few looked almost human, but with strange colors of skin or extra arms. The tournament organizer was a tall, thin alien with purple skin and 4 arms. His name was announced as High Judge Velkoth. He stood in the center of the arena, and his voice boomed out through speakers so everyone could hear him. "Welcome, warriors and watchers, to the 300th Interspecies Combat Championship." His voice was translated into hundreds of different languages, so every alien could understand. For 300 years, the strongest fighters in the galaxy have come here to prove their worth. The crowd roared with excitement. Jake could feel the sound in his chest. "This year," High Judge Velkoth continued, "we have fighters from 47 different worlds. We have the mighty Vorthak warriors from the fire planet Scorius. We have the swift Chitauri hunters from the jungle world of Nexus 7. We have the powerful Corvani berserkers from the ice planet Frostar." Each time he named a species, that group of aliens would stand up and roar or make whatever sound their people made when they were happy. The noise was incredible. "And this year," the judge said, his voice getting quieter so everyone had to listen carefully, "we have something new. Something that has never happened before in the history of this tournament." The arena became silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. "For the first time ever, we have invited the newest species to join the galactic community. Warriors from worlds that have only recently learned to travel between the stars." Jake felt his heart start beating faster. He had a feeling he knew what was coming next. "Please welcome the representatives from Earth." The humans, the spotlight, moved to where Jake and his team were sitting. There were only 20 humans in the entire arena, and they looked very small compared to all the aliens around them. The camera screens around the arena showed their faces to the 1,000,000 aliens watching. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then someone started laughing. Then someone else joined in. Within seconds, the entire arena was filled with the sound of 1,000,000 aliens laughing at the humans. Zexthul stood up from his special champion's chair. He was laughing louder than anyone else. He pointed his finger right at Jake and the other humans. Humans? Zexthol's voice was so loud it could be heard even over the laughter. What kind of joke is this? These tiny, weak creatures think they can fight in our tournament. The laughter got even louder. Some aliens were laughing so hard they were falling out of their seats. Look at them, Zexthol continued. They have no claws, no fangs, no armor, no poison. They're not even as big as our children. What are they going to do, bite us with their tiny teeth? Jake felt his face turn red with embarrassment and anger. Around him, the other humans looked upset too. But when he looked at Lisa, she wasn't laughing or looking angry. She was staring at Zexthul with the same calm look she had when she was studying the other fighters. Perhaps, Zexthul said, now speaking directly to the humans, you can provide some entertainment for us. Maybe you could do a little dance before the real fighters begin their matches. The crowd loved this. They cheered and clapped and made sounds that Jake guessed were their versions of laughter. High Judge Velkoth held up his hands for quiet. It took a long time for the laughter to stop. The tournament rules are simple, he announced. Any species may enter one fighter. The fights continue until only one warrior remains standing. That warrior becomes the champion of the galaxy for 1 year. He looked toward the human section. Do the humans wish to enter a fighter, or are you here only to watch? Jake stood up to answer, but before he could speak, Lisa was on her feet. We'll enter a fighter, she said. Her voice was not loud, but somehow everyone in the arena could hear her clearly. The laughter started again, but not as loud as before. Some of the aliens seemed curious about what would happen next. And who will be your fighter? High Judge, Velkoth asked. I will, Lisa said. Now the laughter stopped completely. The aliens looked confused. They had expected the humans to send their biggest and strongest male fighter. But Lisa was not big by human standards, and she was definitely not big by alien standards. Zexthul stood up again. This is your champion? He asked, pointing at Lisa. This small female? I could break her with one hand. Lisa looked up at him. Even from far away, Jake could see that she was not afraid. We'll see, she said simply. The arena was quiet again. Jake realized that something important had just happened, but he wasn't sure what. All he knew was that Lisa had just agreed to fight some of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy, and from the way she was looking at Zexthul, Jake got the feeling that the aliens had no idea what they were in for. News about the human fighter spread through the space station like fire. Within hours, every alien on Centauri Prime had heard that a small human female had entered the tournament. Most of them thought it was the funniest thing they had ever heard. The betting halls, the odds against Lisa were so high that the numbers barely fit on the screens. Some aliens were betting their entire savings against her, thinking it was free money. The betting computers had to be reprogrammed because no one had ever been considered such a sure loser before. 1,000 to 1 odds, Jake read from a betting screen. That means if someone bets 1 credit on Lisa and she wins, they get 1,000 credits back. No one's going to bet on her, said Commander Bill Rogers, the leader of the human diplomatic team. The aliens think she's going to be crushed in the first few seconds. Lisa walked past them carrying a small bag of training equipment. She had been assigned to the worst training room on the station. It was small, dark, and had broken equipment that other fighters had thrown away. How are you feeling about this? Jake asked her. Fine, Lisa said. She seemed completely calm, like she was getting ready for a normal day at work instead of fighting aliens who could tear her apart. Lisa, you don't have to do this, Commander Rogers said. No one expects you to actually fight. You made your point already. You showed them that humans aren't afraid. Lisa stopped walking and looked at him. I didn't enter this tournament to make a point. I entered it to win. She walked away before anyone could say anything else. The training rooms were located deep inside the station. Lisa's room was at the end of a long hallway, far from where the important fighters trained. As she walked, she passed the training rooms of other fighters. Through the windows, she could see aliens practicing with weapons and equipment that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. The Vorthak fighters were hitting training dummies with enough force to break concrete. The Chitauri were moving so fast they looked like blurs. The Corvani were lifting weights that would have crushed a human car. When Lisa reached her training room, she found a crowd of aliens looking through the window. They were pointing at her and making sounds that were probably laughter in their languages. "Look at the tiny human," one of them said through a translator device. "What is she going to do, dance at us?" "Maybe she thinks she can talk her enemies to death," said another. Lisa ignored them and went inside. The room was small and had only basic equipment. There was a punching bag, some weights, and a mat for floor exercises. Everything looked old and worn out. She started with simple exercises: push-ups, sit-ups, stretching. The aliens watching through the window seemed disappointed. They had expected something more interesting. "Is that all she can do?" one alien asked. "Humans are weaker than we thought," said another. After an hour, most of the aliens got bored and left. Only a few stayed to watch. Lisa continued her training, moving from basic exercises to more complex movements. She practiced punches and kicks, but not in the way the aliens expected. Her movements were smooth and controlled. She wasn't trying to hit as hard as possible or move as fast as possible. Instead, she was practicing precision and timing. Every movement had a purpose. One alien who stayed to watch was different from the others. His name was Drex, and he was a former fighter who now worked as a trainer. He had seen thousands of fighters over the years, and something about the human's movements caught his attention. "She's not training like the others," he said to his companion. "What do you mean?" the other alien asked. "Watch her feet. Watch how she moves her body. She's not just throwing punches, she's practicing something else." The tournament schedule was announced the next day. Lisa's first fight was scheduled for the worst time slot, early morning when most aliens were still sleeping. Her opponent was a Chitauri warrior named Clixeneth. Clixeneth was not one of the top fighters, but he was still dangerous. The Chitauri were insect-like creatures with 4 arms and natural weapons. Their arm bones were sharp enough to cut through metal, and they could move faster than most other species could see. "At least they're not starting you with the strongest fighter," Jake said, trying to make Lisa feel better. "It doesn't matter who I fight first," Lisa said. "I'm here to win the whole tournament." The morning of the fight, only a few hundred aliens came to watch. Most of them were there to see the human get defeated quickly so they could tell their friends about it later. Lisa entered the arena wearing simple human clothing, a gray shirt and black pants. She had no armor, no weapons, and no special equipment. She looked like she was going for a walk in the park. Clixeneth entered from the other side. He was 6 feet tall with green skin that looked like it was made of hard plates. His 4 arms ended in sharp points that gleamed under the arena lights. When he moved, he made clicking sounds that were probably meant to scare his opponent. The referee was a small alien with big eyes and 3 arms. He explained the rules in a bored voice like he was reading from a script. "The fight continues until one fighter yields or cannot continue. No killing is allowed, but serious injury is expected. Fighters, take your positions." Lisa and Clixeneth stood facing each other in the center of the arena. The difference in size was obvious. Clixeneth was taller, had more arms, and looked like he was built for fighting. Lisa looked like she had wandered into the wrong place by mistake. "Begin," the referee said. Clixeneth immediately attacked. He had studied videos of human fighters and decided the best strategy was to end the fight quickly before the human could do anything unexpected. He moved forward with all 4 arms extended, planning to cut the human down with his first strike. His arms moved so fast that most of the aliens in the crowd couldn't follow them. The sharp points of his arms whistled through the air toward Lisa's head and chest. It should have been over in seconds, but Lisa wasn't there anymore. She had moved to the side just as Clixeneth attacked. Not quickly, but at exactly the right moment. Clixeneth's arms cut through empty air where she had been standing a fraction of a second before. Before Clixeneth could recover, Lisa grabbed one of his extended arms with both hands. She used his own forward momentum against him, turning his attack into a throw that sent him flying across the arena. Clixeneth hit the arena wall with a sound like breaking glass. His hard skin cracked and green blood dripped from the cracks. He tried to get up, but something was wrong with his legs. He fell back down and made a sound that the translator said meant, "I give up." The arena was completely silent. Lisa stood in the center of the fighting area. not even breathing hard. She looked exactly the same as when the fight started, except now there was an unconscious alien lying against the wall. The referee stared at her for a long moment before remembering his job. "Winner, Lisa Harper of Earth," he announced. The silence continued for several more seconds. Then the whispers started. "How did she move so fast? Did you see what she did with his arm? How was he hurt so badly?" Lisa walked out of the arena without saying anything. The crowd was still whispering and pointing as she disappeared through the exit. In the champion's viewing area, Zexthul had been watching the fight on a screen while eating his breakfast. He had expected to see the human get defeated in a few seconds, providing some quick entertainment before the real fights began. Instead, he found himself watching the recording of Lisa's throw over and over again. Each time he watched it, he understood less about what had happened. "Get me information about this human," he told his assistant. "I want to know everything about her." Within hours, reporters from across the galaxy were trying to interview Lisa. The odds in the betting halls began to change for the first time. Not by much, but enough to show that some aliens were starting to think differently about the human fighter. In her small room, Lisa was preparing for her next fight. She had studied the tournament bracket and knew who she would face if she kept winning. She was planning for fights that most aliens thought she would never reach, but the aliens were starting to learn something that humans had known for thousands of years. The most dangerous fighter is not always the biggest or the strongest. Sometimes, the most dangerous fighter is the one who thinks differently than everyone else expects. After Lisa's first victory, everything changed. The video of her fight against Clicksmith was played on news channels across the galaxy. Aliens who had never heard of humans before were now asking questions about Earth and its people. The betting odds started to shift. Not by much at first, but enough to make the professional gamblers nervous. Some smart aliens began placing small bets on Lisa, thinking that maybe the odds were too good to pass up. Lisa's second fight was scheduled for a better time slot. More aliens came to watch this time, curious to see if the human's first victory was just luck. Her opponent was a Corvani warrior named Gorath the Crusher. Gorath was 8 feet tall and weighed over 400 pounds. His people came from a planet with heavy gravity, which made them incredibly strong and tough. Gorath had fur like a bear and muscles that looked like they were carved from stone. His arms were as thick as tree trunks. "This should be interesting," Jake said as he watched from the viewing area. "Gorath has never lost a fight by anything other than a decision. No one has ever knocked him down." Commander Rogers shook his head. "Lisa can't possibly handle someone that big. She got lucky against Clicksmith because he was fast but not very smart. Gorath is different. He's been fighting for 20 years. Down. In the arena, Lisa looked even smaller standing across from Gorath. The crowd was much larger this time and they were making more noise. Some were cheering for Lisa, but most were still expecting to see her get crushed. Gorath flexed his massive arms and beat his chest like a gorilla. The sound echoed through the arena like thunder. He was trying to scare Lisa, but she just stood there calmly, watching him with the same focused look she had during her first fight. "Little human," Gorath said in a voice like rocks grinding together. "I will try not to hurt you too badly. Surrender now and save yourself pain." "I'm here to fight," Lisa replied simply. The referee gave the signal to begin, and Gorath charged forward like a freight train. His strategy was simple: use his size and strength to overwhelm the human before she could do anything tricky. But as he ran toward her, Lisa did something unexpected. Instead of trying to dodge to the side like most fighters would do, she ran straight toward him. The crowd gasped. It looked like Lisa was about to be crushed by a creature 3 times her size. At the last possible second, Lisa dropped to the ground and slid between Gorath's legs. As she passed underneath him, she reached up and struck a specific spot on the back of his knee with her fist. Gorath's roar of victory turned into a howl of pain as his leg collapsed under him. The giant warrior crashed to the ground face first, shaking the entire arena floor. Lisa rolled away and got to her feet. Gorath tried to stand up, but his injured leg wouldn't support his weight. He fell again, this time landing on his side. "What did you do to me?" Gorath demanded. trying to understand how such a small opponent had brought him down. "Pressure point," Lisa said. "Your nervous system is similar to ours. I just found the right spot to press." Gorth tried to get up again but fell once more. The big warrior looked confused and angry. He had been in hundreds of fights, but no one had ever defeated him by hitting one spot on his leg. "I yield," he said finally, his voice full of frustration. The crowd was much quieter this time. The whispers were different too. Instead of laughing at the human, the aliens were trying to understand what they had just seen. "How did she know where to hit him?" one alien asked. "She studied him," another replied. "She knew exactly what she was doing." In the viewing areas, combat experts from different species were reviewing the footage of Lisa's second victory. They were starting to realize that the human wasn't just lucky. She was using knowledge and technique that they didn't understand. Lisa's third opponent was a Vorthak warrior named Scarth, the Unbroken. The Vorthak were reptilian creatures with scales harder than steel. Scarth had earned his nickname because no weapon had ever been able to cut through his scales. He was not as big as Gorath, but he was much more experienced and intelligent. The arena was packed for this fight. Word had spread that the human might actually be dangerous, and aliens from across the galaxy wanted to see what would happen next. Scarth entered the arena wearing ceremonial armor over his natural scales. He carried no weapons because his claws were sharp enough to cut through metal. His yellow eyes studied Lisa carefully as he took his position. "You have defeated 2 opponents through trickery," Scarth said, "but tricks will not work against me. I have fought for 30 years. I know every technique, every strategy, every way to win a fight." "We'll see," Lisa said. This time, when the fight began, both fighters moved more carefully. Scarth didn't charge forward like the others had. Instead, he circled Lisa slowly, looking for an opening. Lisa moved with him, always keeping the same distance between them. She was studying him just like he was studying her. For almost a minute, neither fighter attacked. The crowd grew restless, expecting more action. Finally, Scarth made his move. He feinted to the left, then attacked to the right with his claws extended. It was a move that had worked against hundreds of opponents, but Lisa had been watching, his feet, not his hands. She saw the real attack coming and stepped back just far enough to avoid his claws. As his arm passed by her, she grabbed his wrist with one hand and his elbow with the other. What happened next was too fast for most of the crowd to see clearly. Lisa twisted Scarth's arm in a way that used his own strength against him. The Vorthak warrior, who had never been defeated in combat, found himself flying through the air. He landed hard on his back, and before he could get up, Lisa had moved to a position where she could strike his throat. Her hand stopped just inches from his neck. "Yield, or I finish this," she said quietly. Scarth looked up at her. For the first time in his life, he was completely helpless in a fight. The human could have ended his life if she wanted to. "I yield," he said. The crowd erupted. Some aliens were cheering. Others were arguing about what they had seen. The noise was incredible. But in the champion's viewing area, Zexthul was not making any noise at all. He was staring at Lisa with a look that had never been on his face before. "Worry. Get me everything," he told his assistant. "I want to know how humans fight, how they train, everything about their planet and their history. This is not normal." His assistant nodded and hurried away. For the first time in 5 years, the galactic champion was concerned about an opponent. The news reporters were now calling Lisa the Ghost because of the way she seemed to disappear and reappear in different positions during her fights. Combat. Schools across the galaxy were studying videos of her matches, trying to understand her techniques. But the more they studied, the more confused they became. Lisa's fighting style didn't match anything in their databases. She wasn't using the techniques of any known warrior species. What they didn't understand was that Lisa represented something unique in the galaxy. Most alien species had evolved on worlds where they were the dominant predators from the beginning. They had developed fighting styles based on their natural advantages: strength, speed, claws, armor, or poison. But humans had evolved differently. They had been prey animals first, then became predators through intelligence and cooperation. Every human fighting technique had been developed by creatures who had to win or die. Lisa's training included not just modern military combat, but also ancient martial arts that had been refined over thousands of years of human warfare. She carried within her the knowledge of every human who had ever had to fight for survival. As she prepared for her fourth fight, Lisa knew that the easy victories were over. The remaining opponents would be the best fighters in the galaxy. They would study her previous fights and try to find ways to counter her techniques. But she also knew something that the aliens were just beginning to understand. Humans didn't win fights by being stronger or faster than their enemies. They won by being smarter, more adaptable, and more willing to do whatever it took to survive. The tournament was about to enter its most dangerous phase, and Lisa Harper was ready. The day of the semi-final match arrived with more excitement than anyone had expected. Lisa's next opponent was Veltar the Destroyer, last year's runner-up and the only fighter who had ever come close to defeating Zexthul in recent years. Veltar was from a species called the Nexari. They looked like humans but were taller, faster, and stronger in every way. Their skin was silver and seemed to shine under the lights. Veltar had never lost a fight to anyone except Zexthul, and even those fights had been close. The arena was completely full for the first time since the tournament began. Aliens had traveled from across the galaxy to see if the human could really make it to the championship match. The betting pools were now split almost evenly, with many species putting their money on Lisa. Jake sat in the viewing area with the rest of the human delegation. He was more nervous than he had been for any of Lisa's previous fights. "She's made it further than anyone thought possible," Commander Rogers said. "Even if she loses now, she's already proved that humans belong here." "She's not planning to lose," Jake replied. He had been watching Lisa prepare for this fight, and she seemed more focused than ever. Down in the arena, camera crews from hundreds of news channels were setting up their equipment. This fight was being broadcast live to over 10 billion viewers across the galaxy. It was the most watched semi-final match in tournament history. Veltar entered the arena to thunderous applause. He was 6.5 feet tall with the build of a perfect athlete. His silver skin seemed to glow with its own light, and his movements were smooth and graceful. When he raised his arms to acknowledge the crowd, his muscles rippled like liquid metal. Lisa entered from the opposite side to a different kind of noise. Half the crowd was cheering for her, but the other half was still booing. She had become the most controversial fighter in tournament history. She looked the same as always, calm, focused, and completely unbothered by the noise around her. She wore the same simple gray shirt and black pants she had worn for every fight. The referee was different this time. Instead of the small alien who had officiated her previous matches, a large, impressive alien with 4 arms and ceremonial robes stood in the center of the arena. This was High Judge Velkoth himself, showing how important this match had become. "Fighters of the galaxy," his voice boomed through the arena, "you are about to witness history. Never before has a human reached the semi-final round of this tournament. Never before has the established order been challenged in this way." He gestured to both fighters. "Veltar the Destroyer, champion of Nexus Prime, winner of 47 consecutive matches. Lisa Harper of Earth, the fighter they call the Ghost, winner of 3 matches that have shocked the galaxy." The crowd was completely silent, hanging on every word. "The winner of this match will face our champion, Zexthul, tomorrow night for the championship of the galaxy. Fighters, are you ready?" Both Lisa and Veltar nodded. "Then begin." This time, neither fighter moved immediately. They had both studied each other's previous fights carefully. Veltar knew that Lisa was dangerous at close range, and Lisa knew that Veltar was faster and stronger than her previous opponents. They circled each other slowly, each looking for an opening. The crowd watched in tense silence, knowing that the first mistake would probably decide the fight. Veltar moved first. He didn't charge forward like Lisa's previous opponents had done. Instead, he threw a quick jab to test her reflexes, then pulled back before she could counterattack. Lisa blocked the punch easily, but she could feel the power behind it. Veltar was much stronger than he looked. They continued to circle each other, throwing occasional strikes that were more about gathering information than trying to win. Veltar was learning how Lisa moved, and Lisa was studying his timing and balance. The crowd began to grow restless. They had expected immediate action, but both fighters were being very careful. Then Veltar made his real attack. He feinted low, then came up high with a punch that should have taken Lisa's head off. But she wasn't there when his fist arrived. Lisa had slipped under his punch and moved to his side. She struck at his ribs with her elbow, but Veltar twisted away and her blow only grazed him. They separated and began circling again. "She's fast," Veltar said, speaking for the first time since the fight began. "You're not bad yourself," Lisa replied. The next exchange was faster. Veltar threw a combination of punches that would have overwhelmed most opponents, but Lisa moved between them like water flowing around rocks. She couldn't counterattack because he was too fast, but she avoided all of his strikes. For 5 minutes, they fought like this. Veltar would attack with combinations that showcased his superior speed and strength, and Lisa would flow around his attacks while looking for openings that never quite appeared. The crowd was now completely absorbed in the fight. Even aliens who had never cared about combat sports were on the edge of their seats. In the champions' viewing area, Zexthul was studying every movement. He had fought Veltar many times and knew exactly how dangerous the silver-skinned warrior was. The fact that Lisa was holding her own against him was deeply troubling. "She's learning," Zexthul said to his assistant. "Every exchange, she's getting better at reading his patterns." And he was right. Lisa was doing something that Veltar had never experienced before. Instead of trying to match his speed and strength, she was studying him like a puzzle to be solved. After 8 minutes of careful fighting, Lisa saw what she had been looking for. Veltar had a habit of dropping his left hand slightly after throwing a right cross. It was a tiny flaw that most fighters would never notice, but Lisa had been watching for it. When Veltar threw his next right cross, Lisa didn't just dodge it. She caught his extended arm at the wrist and elbow, just like she had done with her previous opponents. But Veltar was ready for this. He had studied her previous fights too. As soon as she grabbed his arm, he used his superior strength to reverse the hold and grab her instead. For a moment, they struggled against each other, each trying to gain the advantage. Veltar was stronger, but Lisa had better technique. Then Lisa did something that no one expected. Instead of trying to break free from Veltar's grip, she used it as an anchor point and swung her body around behind him. Before he could react, she had wrapped her arm around his neck in a chokehold. Veltar tried to throw her off, but she held on. He spun around, trying to slam her into the arena wall, but she adjusted her position and maintained the hold. The crowd was going wild. No one had ever seen anything like this before. Veltar's struggles became weaker as the chokehold cut off the blood flow to his brain. His silver skin began to turn darker. He tried one last desperate move, throwing himself backward to crush Lisa against the ground, but she rolled with the impact and kept the hold locked in. "I yield," Veltar gasped out, his voice barely audible. Lisa released the hold immediately and stepped back. Veltar collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. The arena exploded in noise. Aliens were cheering, shouting, and making sounds that had no translation. The impossible had happened. A human had reached the championship match. Lisa stood in the center of the arena, not celebrating, just breathing calmly and looking toward the champion's viewing area where Zexthul was sitting. Their eyes met across the arena. For the first time in his career, the galactic champion was looking at an opponent who truly didn't seem afraid of him. Tomorrow night, they would face each other for the championship of the galaxy. And for the first time in 5 years, no one was sure who would win. The championship match was scheduled for the next evening, giving both fighters 1 day to prepare. The entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath as news of Lisa's victory spread to every civilized world. Zexthul spent the day watching videos of all Lisa's fights over and over again. He had his best trainers and combat experts analyze every movement she made. But the more they studied her, the more worried they became. "She doesn't fight like anyone we've ever seen," his head trainer told him. "Her techniques don't match any known fighting style in our databases." "Then we'll create new strategies," Zexthul replied. but there was uncertainty in his voice for the first time in years. Lisa spent her day quietly training in her small room. She had studied Zextul's fighting style for weeks, watching every match he had ever fought in the tournament. She knew his strengths, his preferred attacks, and most importantly, his weaknesses. The morning of the championship match, Jake visited Lisa in her training room. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Ready," Lisa said simply. She was stretching and moving through slow practice motions, keeping her muscles loose and her mind focused. "Lisa, you know you've already won, right? I mean, you've made it to the championship. You've proved that humans belong here. No one expects you to actually beat Zextul." Lisa stopped stretching and looked at him. "I do. But he's the champion of the galaxy. He's never been seriously hurt in a fight. He's bigger, stronger, and faster than you." "He's also never fought a human before," Lisa replied, "and after tonight he'll know why that matters." The arena was packed beyond capacity for the championship match. Aliens who couldn't get tickets watched on screens in the hallways and corridors of the space station. The betting pools had reached record levels, with the odds now almost even between the two fighters. In viewing areas across the galaxy, billions of beings gathered to watch what many were calling the most important fight in galactic history. This wasn't just about who was the strongest fighter anymore. It was about whether the established order of the galaxy would continue, or if the newcomers from Earth would change everything. The opening ceremony was grander than anything the tournament had ever seen. Lights flashed, music played, and holographic displays showed highlights from both fighters' careers. Zextul entered the arena like a conquering hero. He wore ceremonial armor that gleamed under the lights, and his muscular frame looked even more impressive than usual. When he raised his arms to acknowledge the crowd, the noise was deafening. But when Lisa entered from the opposite side, the reception was different. Half the crowd cheered louder than they had for anyone, while the other half remained silent. She had divided the galaxy into those who believed in her, and those who still thought she was a lucky upstart. She wore the same simple clothes she had worn for every fight. No armor, no ceremony, no acknowledgement of the crowd. She walked to the center of the arena like she was going to work. High Judge Velkoth stood between them, his forearms raised for silence. "Citizens of the galaxy," his voice echoed through the arena. "Tonight you witness history. For 300 years this tournament has determined the greatest warrior in known space. Tonight, for the first time, a human challenges for that title." He gestured to Zextul. Zextul of Drakmor, champion for 5 consecutive years, undefeated in 43 matches, holder of 7 galactic combat records. The crowd roared its approval. He turned to Lisa. "Lisa Harper of Earth, the fighter who has shocked the galaxy. Winner of 4 matches that have redefined what we thought possible." The cheers for Lisa were different. Louder in some ways, more emotional, as if people were cheering for something bigger than just one fighter. "Champions," High Judge Velkoth said, "you may address the crowd before we begin." Zextul stepped forward. His voice boomed through the arena without need for amplification. "I have been your champion for 5 years, he said. "I have defeated every challenger, crushed every rebellion against the natural order. I am the strongest, the fastest, the most skilled warrior in the galaxy." He pointed directly at Lisa. "This human thinks she can challenge the might of Drakmor. She thinks her tricks and luck can overcome true strength. Tonight, I will show her and the entire galaxy that there are limits to what inferior species can achieve." The crowd cheered, but not as loudly as they had in the past. Too many of them had watched Lisa's previous fights to dismiss her completely. Lisa's turn came next. She stepped forward, and the arena fell silent. "I represent Earth and humanity," she said, her voice clear and steady. "We don't make threats. We don't boast about our superiority. We just do what needs to be done." She looked up at the millions of aliens watching her. "Tonight you'll learn something about humans that we learned long ago. The most dangerous predator isn't always the biggest or the strongest. Sometimes it's the one that thinks differently than everyone else expects." The arena was completely quiet for a moment. Then someone started clapping. Then someone else joined in. Within seconds, half the arena was applauding. while the other half sat in thoughtful silence. High Judge Velkoth raised his arms one final time. "Let the championship begin." Both fighters moved to their starting positions. Zexthul looked confident and relaxed, like he was about to do something he had done many times before. Lisa looked focused and calm, like she was solving a math problem in her head. The referee dropped his hand and the fight began. Zexthul immediately charged forward with a roar that shook the arena. His strategy was simple: use his superior size and strength to overwhelm the human before she could implement whatever tricks she had used against her previous opponents. But as he ran toward her with his fists raised, something was different. Lisa didn't try to dodge to the side like she had against other opponents. Instead, she moved toward him, closing the distance between them. Zexthul was surprised but not worried. If the human wanted to fight him at close range, that would make his job easier. He threw a massive punch aimed at her head, putting all his strength behind it. The punch should have ended the fight immediately, but it never connected. Lisa had moved inside his reach, closer than any opponent had ever dared to get. His punch whistled over her head as she stepped forward and slightly to the side. Before Zexthul could react, Lisa's left hand shot upward, striking his extended elbow joint with surgical precision. The sound that echoed through the arena was sharp and final, the crack of breaking bone. Zexthul's roar of triumph turned into a scream of agony as his arm bent in a direction that nature had never intended. The most powerful warrior in the galaxy staggered backward, clutching his broken arm and staring at Lisa in shock and disbelief. Lisa had never moved her feet from their starting position. She had generated enough force to shatter alien bone using nothing but technique, timing, and knowledge of anatomy that came from studying every species in the tournament. The arena was silent except for Zexthul's heavy breathing and occasional whimpers of pain. A million aliens sat in stunned disbelief, unable to process what they had just witnessed. "Yield," Lisa said quietly, her voice carrying clearly in the silence. Zexthul looked up at her, and for the first time in his life, he truly understood what he was facing. Not a lucky amateur or a clever trickster, but a representative of a species that had fought its way from the bottom of the food chain to the stars through intelligence, adaptability, and the kind of focused violence that could end conflicts in seconds. "I yield," he whispered. High Judge Velkoth stared at both fighters for a long moment before remembering his duties. "Winner and new champion of the galaxy," he announced, his voice shaking slightly. "Lisa Harper of Earth." The arena exploded in noise. Some aliens cheered, others argued, and many sat in thoughtful silence as they tried to understand what this meant for the galaxy. Lisa walked over to Zexthul and helped him to his feet, careful not to worsen his injury. As they walked off the arena floor together, she spoke to him quietly. "You're a skilled fighter and a brave warrior," she said. "But you made the mistake that everyone makes when they first encounter humans. You assumed that bigger and stronger always wins. My people learned a long time ago that the best way to win a fight is to end it before your opponent knows it has really started." As the championship crown was placed on her head, Lisa looked up at the billions of beings watching. Across the galaxy, the message was clear and simple. Humanity had arrived among the stars, and they had earned their place not through luck or politics, but through the oldest and most respected currency in the universe: victory in combat. The age of underestimating humans was over, and the galaxy would never be the same.